Lonely elderly woman invites a homeless man into her home, and what happens next leaves everyone speechless. Louise, an 85-year-old widow, lived alone in a modest house on the outskirts of a large city. The walls of her small home were silent witnesses to decades of memories. Yellowed photographs adorned the antique furniture, displaying a life full of precious moments with her beloved husband, Henry, who had passed away over 20 years ago. Louise and Henry had shared a deep and sincere love story. Together, they had weathered highs and lows, creating a home filled with love and laughter. Henry was a man of faith, always optimistic and encouraging, qualities that had helped Louise find strength during the toughest times. When Henry died, a part of Louise went with him, leaving her with a constant sadness in her heart. Every morning, Louise began her day with a silent prayer, asking for strength to face another day. "God, give me strength to carry on," she whispered, her eyes closed, feeling Henry's presence in her heart. "Henry, I miss you so much. I still feel your hand holding mine. How I wish you were here." Louise had grown accustomed to Henry's absence, but the pain had never fully disappeared. She found solace in her unwavering faith and her generosity toward others. She was known for her dedication to the activities of the local church, where she spent much of her time, offering a comforting shoulder or a word of comfort to those in need. "Today will be a good day," she murmured to herself as she made the bed. "I need to carry on, for myself and for Henry. He would want me to move forward, helping others as we always did together." Louise had a spiritual routine that was her anchor, keeping her steady even through the most intense emotional storms. After breakfast, she would head to the small altar she had set up in a corner of the living room, where a portrait of Henry held a place of honor. She lit a candle and prayed. "Henry, continue to guide me. I still need your light." Louise's afternoons were often spent at the church, where she actively participated in masses and events. She enjoyed helping in the kitchen, preparing meals for those in need. "Henry, you would be proud of me. I'm trying to make a difference, just as we always did together." But as night fell and the house became silent, the loneliness became deafening. Sitting in her rocking chair, with a cup of tea in her hands, Louise reminisced about the happy times she had shared with Henry. "Remember when we danced in the living room, Henry? How wonderful it felt to have your arms around me." The memories brought a mix of comfort and sadness, filling the void left by the loss. Keeping her home immaculate was a way to find peace amidst the solitude. Every corner carefully cleaned and organized reflected her dedication and the desire to keep the memories of the past alive. "Everything is in its place, Henry. I know how you like to see everything tidy." Louise often talked to herself, as if Henry were still by her side. "Today I saw a young woman at church who reminded me of when we were young. She had the same sparkle in her eyes that you did. I missed our adventures." On Sundays, Louise prepared herself with special care for Mass. It was the day she felt most connected to the community, surrounded by people who, like her, sought a greater purpose in faith. "Today, I will pray for you, Henry, and for myself too, so that I may have the strength to continue." However, upon returning home, the sense of emptiness intensified. Loneliness was a constant companion, and Louise needed to find strength within herself not to succumb to it. "I'll be all right, Henry. You always believed in me, and I will continue to believe as well." Louise closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the tears well up. "I love you, Henry, and I always will. I will continue living for both of us." Louise maintained a meticulously structured routine, where faith and church activities played central roles. After Henry's death, the church became her refuge, a place where she could feel connected to both the community and her late husband. It was there that she found comfort and purpose, dedicating herself to helping others in the best way possible. "Today is another day, Henry," she murmured to herself while lighting a candle at the small altar in her home. "I'm going to church to help prepare for the Mass. I know you would be proud of me." Louise was a constant presence at the local church. Sunday mornings were especially significant, starting early with the preparation of breakfast for the community's most needy members. She joined a group of volunteers, all united by the desire to do good. "Good morning, Louise," greeted Mary, a friend and fellow volunteer, with a warm smile. "How are you today?" "Good morning, Mary. I'm well, thank God. And you?" replied Louise, her soft voice reflecting her inner serenity. As they organized the tables and prepared the meals, Louise felt a deep connection with Henry. He had always been a generous man, willing to help anyone in need. "Henry, you would be here with me, serving coffee and bread, smiling at every face that came through the door," she thought as she distributed food. During the Masses, Louise found moments of true peace. Sitting in the church pew, she felt close to God and Henry. The pastor's words resonated in her heart, bringing solace and hope. "Lord, thank you for another day. Thank you for this community that welcomes me and gives me strength to continue." Pastor John often praised Louise in his sermons, using her as an example of faith and dedication. "Louise is a light in our community," he would say with a smile. "Her kindness and faith are inspirations to us all." Louise blushed slightly, feeling humble amid the praise. "I'm just doing what is right," she thought. "Henry, you taught me the importance of helping others. I continue because I know it's what you would want me to do." One afternoon, after a church event, Louise was called into the pastor's office. "Louise, I wanted to thank you personally for everything you do. Your dedication is impressive." "Thank you, Pastor John," she responded, moved. "The church is my second home. I feel that here I can honor Henry's memory and continue our work together." The pastor smiled, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "Know that everyone here greatly values what you do. Your faith is an example for us all." Leaving the pastor's office, Louise encountered Mary again. "Louise, have you ever thought about leading a support group for widows? Your experience and faith could help many women going through what you've experienced." Louise considered the proposal, touched. "Perhaps it's a good idea, Mary. If I can help someone find the peace I have found, it would be a great gift." Mary's suggestion planted a seed in Louise's heart. She began to consider leading a support group, using her own journey of faith and overcoming to inspire other women. "Henry, I feel I'm on the right path. Thank you for continuing to guide me," she whispered, looking up at the sky. However, what she couldn't imagine was that life was about to bring her a surprise. Louise's faith was not just a religious practice, but a vital force that kept her connected to the past, present, and future. Her dedication to the church and community was an extension of the love she had always felt for Henry, a love that continued to guide her every day. On a cold winter morning, Louise woke to the sound of the wind howling outside. She got out of bed, wrapped herself in her wool shawl, and went to the kitchen to prepare her morning tea. Opening the door to fetch the newspaper, she found a young homeless man sleeping at her doorstep. He was visibly worn out, shivering from cold and hunger. Louise was surprised and moved by the sight. Without hesitation, she decided to help him. "Come in, my son, warm yourself," she said with a soft and welcoming voice. The young man, whose name was Eddie, was hesitant and suspicious, but the need for shelter and food prevailed. He entered the house hesitantly, feeling out of place in such a warm and safe environment. "What is your name?" asked Louise as she prepared a hot cup of tea. "Eddie," he replied, his voice hoarse and shaky. Louise offered him the cup of tea and some soup she had made the night before. "Here, this will warm you up," she said with a welcoming smile. Eddie took the cup with trembling hands and began to drink. "Thank you, ma'am. Louise," he said, reading her name embroidered on her apron. "You're welcome, Eddie. We all need help sometimes," replied Louise. As Eddie ate, Louise observed the deep sadness in his eyes. "Do you have a place to stay, Eddie?" she asked, trying not to be intrusive. "No, I don't. I've been on the streets for a while," replied Eddie, avoiding her gaze. Louise felt a pang of pain in her heart upon hearing this. "You can stay here for a while until you recover. My house is small, but there's room for one more." Eddie looked at her, surprised by her generous offer. "Why are you doing this for me?" Louise smiled. "Because I believe everyone deserves a second chance. And who knows, you might find a better path from here on out." As the days passed, Eddie began to open up a bit more to Louise. One peaceful afternoon, as they drank tea in the living room, Louise gently asked, "Eddie, what happened to you? How did you end up in this situation?" Eddie sighed deeply, looking at his hands. "I was abandoned by my family as a child. I had to survive on the streets, and that led me to do things I never imagined I would." Louise nodded, encouraging him to continue. "What do you mean, Eddie? You can trust me." He hesitated for a moment, but then decided to open his heart. "I got involved with gangs to survive. I stole, burgled, threatened people. I've been arrested several times. I hurt people, and it haunts me every day. Tired of that life, but I didn't know how to get out of it." Louise listened attentively, feeling deep compassion for him. "We all have our demons, Eddie," she said softly, "but faith and compassion can help us find a way back. You deserve a second chance." Eddie looked at her, his eyes full of pain. "It's hard to believe that, Louise. I've done horrible things. Sometimes I think there's no redemption for me." Louise gently placed her hand on his. "Everyone deserves redemption, Eddie. You can start over. I'm here to help you." Eddie, still struggling with his own demons, began to find a small ray of hope in Louise's words. "Do you really believe that, Louise?" "Yes, I believe. I believe that with faith and support, you can change your life, and I'll be by your side along the way." Despite having confessed his past to Louise, Eddie remained reluctant and suspicious of her intentions. One morning, while they had coffee in the small kitchen, Eddie finally expressed his doubts. "Why are you doing this, Louise? What do you gain by helping someone like me?" asked Eddie, looking at the cup in his hands. Louise smiled gently. "Eddie, I believe everyone deserves a chance to start over. I do this because I believe in the power of compassion and faith. I've seen many people find a new path, and I believe you can do the same." Eddie shook his head, incredulous. "I don't know if I can believe that. My past is too dark." Louise placed her hand over his. "We all have our burdens, Eddie. I'll tell you a story. When I was young, before I met my husband, I went through a very difficult time. I lost my parents and felt completely lost. It was the faith and kindness of strangers that helped me find a way back. One afternoon, while helping Louise in the garden, Eddie asked, "Louise, do you really believe that God still cares about me after everything I've done?" Louise stopped what she was doing and looked deeply into Eddie's eyes. "I believe God never abandons us, Eddie. Sometimes we drift away, but He is always there, waiting for us to return. In Isaiah 41:10, it is written, 'Fear not, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand.' You are not alone." The next day, Louise convinced Eddie to accompany her to church. "You'll like the people there, Eddie. They are all very welcoming," she said with an encouraging smile. Eddie, however, was hesitant. I don't know, Louise. I think I've been forgotten by God." What will these people think of me? Louise held his hand firmly. You haven't been forgotten, Eddie. God is always with us, even in the toughest times. And the people at the church will welcome you, you'll see. Remember what it says in Romans 8:38-39. For I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation, will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. At the church, Eddie felt the curious and suspicious glances from the congregation members. He shrank a little, feeling out of place. During the sermon, the pastor spoke about forgiveness and redemption, but Eddie felt those words weren't meant for him. After the service, some people approached Louise, chatting amiably. Eddie stood aside, feeling invisible. An elderly lady looked at him suspiciously and whispered to another person, "Did you see that man with Louise? They say he has a criminal past." Eddie heard the comment and felt a wave of shame. He turned to leave, but Louise held him back. "Wait, Eddie. Don't let this affect you." Eddie shook his head. "They'll never accept me, Louise. I don't belong here." Louise looked at him with determination. "Yes, you do belong. Let's talk to the pastor." They approached the pastor, who smiled warmly. "Eddie, it's good to see you here. Everyone deserves a second chance." Eddie sighed, still doubtful. "I don't know if I believe that, Pastor. People here, they judge me for my past." The pastor placed his hand on Eddie's shoulder. "Forgiveness starts with yourself, Eddie. Give people time. Show them you've changed. In 2 Corinthians 5:17 it is written, Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone. The new is here." Adapting to Louise's tranquil routine and a life free of crime was a constant challenge for Eddie. He battled past impulses and internal conflicts. One evening, while dining, Eddie expressed his frustration. "It's hard, Louise. Sometimes I feel like I'll never be able to leave my past behind." Louise looked at him with compassion. "It takes time, Eddie, but I believe in you. And more importantly, you need to believe in yourself." On a new day, the tension in the community grew as more people learned about Eddie's past. Louise and the pastor were determined not to abandon him. At church, many congregation members became fearful of Eddie, believing he was a dangerous criminal. During meetings, people criticized Louise for bringing Eddie to church and for welcoming him into her home. "She's crazy," muttered a lady named Donna Laura to a group of friends. "She doesn't know what she's doing anymore. She should be committed and he should be locked up." "How can she trust someone with that past?" another voice said. "It's a risk to all of us." Aware of the rumors, Louise kept her head high, but the pain of the words weighed on her heart. She met with the pastor before the sermon and vented. "Pastor, people are scared. They're saying terrible things about Eddie and about me." The pastor, with an expression of understanding and firmness, replied, "Louise, God calls us to be light in the darkness. Eddie needs us, and we need to show the community what it truly means to follow Christ." That morning, the pastor took to the pulpit with renewed determination. He knew he needed to address the situation directly and powerfully. The silence in the church was palpable as he began to speak. Brothers and sisters, today I want to talk about the power of forgiveness and second chances. In Ephesians 4:32, it is written, "Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you." The pastor's eyes swept over the congregation. "I know many of you are worried and afraid, but Jesus taught us to welcome the lost, to reach out to those who need us the most. Eddie is trying to change, seeking redemption, and needs our support, not our judgment." Some members of the congregation began to shift uncomfortably, while others looked at Eddie with a new perspective. Louise, sitting next to Eddie, squeezed his hand, offering him strength and solidarity. "Who are we to deny anyone the chance for redemption?" continued the pastor. "Remember Luke 15:7. I tell you that there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent." After the sermon, some church members approached Eddie and Louise, offering words of support and encouragement. "Louise, you are a brave woman," said a lady named Anna. "I'll pray for you." However, not everyone was convinced. Some remained skeptical and hostile, whispering among themselves. "This is a mistake," said a man with a look of distrust. "This Eddie doesn't deserve our trust." The tension in the community was evident, but Louise and the pastor were determined to continue. They knew Eddie's journey would be long and filled with challenges, but they were willing to face them together, relying on the strength of faith and compassion to overcome distrust and fear. Alone in Louise's house, Eddie faced an overwhelming internal crisis. He sat in the small living room, staring fixedly at the floor. The struggle against the impulses to steal and suicidal thoughts was constant and exhausting. Even with the church's acceptance, he still felt the temptation to revert to old habits, especially when he saw valuables at the church. "I can't keep going like this," Eddie murmured to himself, his voice hoarse with despair. I can't do it. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am a lost cause." He stood up and paced around the room, trying to calm his tumultuous mind. "Why am I here? Louise? What does she see in me? Why does she believe I can change? I am a thief, a criminal." Eddie looked at a small crucifix hanging on the wall and felt a pang in his heart. "God, do you really forgive me? Are you there? I don't know what to believe anymore." Guilt and shame consumed him, plunging him into a deep emotional conflict. Suicidal thoughts became more frequent. Maybe ending it all is the only way out. At least then, I won't hurt anyone else. He threw himself on the couch, his hands in his head, trying to push away the dark thoughts. "I can't do this to Louise. She believes in me. But what if I fail? What if I end up hurting her too?" Eddie began to speak out loud, as if conversing with someone else. "You're not good enough, Eddie. You never were. Just look at yourself. Everything you touch turns to disaster." "No, that's not true," he shouted, trying to drive away the internal voices. "I can change. Louise believes in me. The pastor believes in me. I need to believe too." But the dark thoughts continued to invade him. "You're a fraud. They're just waiting for you to fail. Everyone hates you. No one trusts you." Eddie abruptly stood up, feeling a growing panic. "I can't go crazy. I can't. I need help. Louise, where are you? I need you." Tears began to roll down Eddie's face. He felt lost and desperate. "God, if you're really there, please help me. I don't know what to do. I don't want to be this person. I don't want to go back to that life." He looked toward the door, hoping Louise would appear and bring some comfort. "Louise, please come back soon. I need you. I can't do this alone." Eddie continued to battle his inner demons, his mind torn between the desire for change and the temptation to succumb to old habits. He knew he needed to find strength within himself, but the fight was hard and lonely. "I can't give up," Eddie murmured to himself, his voice full of determination. "Not now. Not after everything Louise has done for me. I need to be strong. I need to..." But the dark thoughts continued to haunt him, and Eddie knew the struggle was far from over. He needed support, needed to believe that there was light at the end of the tunnel, and more than anything, he needed to find peace within himself. After the emotional storm, Eddie began to find small rays of hope in his life. With the help of Louise and Pastor Sean, he secured a simple job at a local convenience store. The owner, A kind man named Mr. Shawnson was willing to give Eddie a chance, inspired by the faith Louise and the pastor showed in him. "Eddie, everyone deserves a chance," Mr. Shawnson said on the first day of work. "Believe in yourself and do your best. I'm counting on you." Eddie smiled timidly. "Thank you, Mr. Shawnson. I won't let you down." With the job, Eddie began to feel more useful and less like a burden. He also became more involved in church activities, helping at events and participating in meetings. Slowly, he started to see positive changes in his life. There were still moments of doubt and temptation, but he clung to his faith and the support of Louise and Pastor Sean. One afternoon, while stocking shelves in the store, Eddie saw Louise at the exit, waiting for him. "Hi, Louise. What brings you here?" he asked, surprised. "I came to see how you're doing," she replied with a smile, "and to bring you a snack. I know you must be tired." Eddie felt warmth in his heart. "Thank you, Louise. You're an angel." "No, Eddie, I'm just doing what I believe is right. How's the job going?" "It's going well," Eddie responded hesitantly. "But I still feel like some people look at me sideways. I guess they'll never forget my past." Louise held his hand. "The important thing is that you're doing your part. Keep at it, and people will notice." Despite the advances, Eddie still faced prejudices. Some people in the community noticed his dedication, but the wary glances and whispers behind his back didn't disappear entirely. It was a constant struggle for Eddie to prove he had changed, but he remained steadfast, finding strength in his faith and the support of Louise and Pastor Sean. Days after starting his new job, Eddie experienced an emotional relapse. Feeling like a burden to Louise and incapable of true change, he decided to leave her house. In a desperate impulse, he took Louise's savings, kept in a small safe, and fled without leaving a note. Louise woke up the next morning and realized that Eddie had disappeared. When she saw that her savings were also gone, her heart tightened, not with anger, but with worry. "Oh, Eddie," she whispered, tears rolling down her face. Instead of reporting him, she rushed to the church, seeking help from Pastor Sean. "Pastor Sean, Eddie is gone. He thinks he's a burden," said Louise, her voice trembling with concern. "He took my savings, but I don't care about the money. I'm worried about him." Pastor Sean was silent for a moment, thoughtful. "We need to find him, Louise. Eddie is lost and needs us now more than ever." With determination, Pastor Sean took to the streets in search of Eddie. After several hours, he found him sitting on a park bench, soaked by the rain. "Eddie," the pastor called out, approaching slowly. "What are you doing here? Everyone is worried about you." Eddie looked up, his eyes red from crying. "Pastor, I can't do it. I'm not good enough. I took Louise's money. She must hate me now." Pastor Sean sat next to him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Louise doesn't hate you, Eddie. She's worried about you. We all are. Let's go back. Let's face this together." Eddie shook his head, his eyes filled with pain and despair. "You don't understand, Pastor. I'm a failure. Everything I do, I mess up. I don't deserve Louise's kindness, nor yours. I should never have left those streets." Pastor Sean squeezed Eddie's shoulder more firmly, trying to convey all his compassion and determination. "Eddie, we all make mistakes. What's important is what we do after we err. You're here now, with a chance to change. Louise believes in you, and so do I." "But I stole from her!" Eddie shouted, his voice laden with guilt. "I stole from the only person who really believed in me. How can I look at her again?" "Eddie, redemption isn't an easy path," Pastor Sean said calmly. "You will fall and you will fail. But what matters is getting up and continuing to try. Louise understands this, and she's ready to forgive you. We all are." Eddie buried his face in his hands, tears freely falling. I don't know if I can." I'm tired of disappointing people. Pastor Sean leaned in closer, looking directly into Eddie's eyes. You're not alone on this journey. Louise and I are here to help. You have a family now, Eddie. You don't have to carry this burden alone. Eddie slowly raised his head, his eyes meeting the pastor's. Do you really think I can change? That I can be someone different? I believe you've already started to change. Pastor Sean replied with an encouraging smile. Every step you take, every attempt, is a victory. Come on, Eddie. Let's go back home. With tears in his eyes, Eddie nodded. All right, I'll go back. But I'm scared. It's normal to feel scared, said the pastor, helping Eddie to stand up. But together, we can face anything. Trust us. Pastor Sean led him back to Louise's house. Upon arriving, Eddie was surprised to find a dinner table set with flowers and candles. Louise was there, waiting for him with a welcoming smile. Eddie, welcome back, she said softly, tears in her eyes. Eddie fell to his knees, crying uncontrollably. Louise, I'm so sorry. I don't deserve this. Louise hugged him tightly. Yes, you do, Eddie. You're like a son to me. And sons deserve love and forgiveness, Eddie sobbed, feeling a love and acceptance he had never known. And you're like the mother I never had, Louise. Thank you for believing in me. Louise also cried, tears of relief and joy falling. We'll get through this together, Eddie. You're not alone. They sat down at the table, and the dinner was marked by tears and smiles, as Eddie shared his struggles and hopes with Pastor Sean and Louise. That night, Eddie felt he had not just found a new home, but a new family. And with their support, he was ready to face any challenge that lay ahead. The next morning, after Eddie's emotional return, Louise's house seemed a place of renewed hope. Eddie woke up with sunlight streaming through the window, feeling different, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He got up, dressed, and went to the kitchen, where Louise was already preparing breakfast. Good morning, Eddie, said Louise with a warm smile. I hope you slept well. Good morning, Louise. Yes, I did, thank you, Eddie replied, sitting at the table. I want to thank you for everything you've done for me. I'm really sorry for everything. Louise held his hand. Eddie, what matters is that you're here, willing to change. Let's leave the past behind and focus on the future. After breakfast, Eddie headed to work at Mr. Shonson's convenience store. Upon entering the store, Mr. Shonson greeted him with a smile. Good to see you back, Eddie. Hope you're ready for another day of work. Yes, sir, I'm ready, Eddie responded with determination. While Eddie worked, he still felt the suspicious glances from some customers. But at the same time, he also received words of encouragement from others. Keep it up, Eddie. We're rooting for you, said a customer named Mrs. Thompson, a lady who attended the church. Eddie felt a mix of emotions. The support was comforting, but the suspicious looks still bothered him. He knew he needed to continue proving his worth. One afternoon, while walking home, Eddie encountered an old acquaintance, Mike, who had been his partner in crime in the past. Mike approached with a sly smile. Hey, Eddie, heard you're trying to lead an honest life. What a waste, Mike said, offering a cigarette. Eddie refused. No, Mike, I've changed. I don't want that life anymore. Mike laughed. You? Change? Don't make me laugh. You'll never be anything but a criminal. Eddie felt a surge of anger, but remembered the words of Louise and Pastor Sean. I'm trying, Mike. I don't need to go back to that life. Good luck to you, but I'm out. Eddie continued walking, leaving Mike behind. Upon arriving home, Louise was waiting on the porch. How was your day, Eddie? She asked. It was tough, but I'm trying. I ran into an old acquaintance, Mike, who tried to lure me back into a life of crime. Louise sighed. Those temptations will always be there, Eddie. But what matters is how you react to them. I'm proud of you for resisting. Eddie smiled timidly. Thank you, Louise. Your support means a lot to me. That night, during a prayer meeting at the church, Pastor Sean asked Eddie to share his testimony. Eddie, nervous, took the pulpit and began to speak. I never thought I'd be here, speaking to you all. My life has been full of mistakes and regrets. But thanks to Louise and Pastor Sean, I'm trying to change. I want to thank everyone for believing in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. Eddie's words moved the congregation. Many came up to him afterward, offering words of encouragement and support. Eddie felt a new sense of belonging. After the meeting, Eddie and Louise had a heartfelt conversation at home. Louise, I know I still have a long way to go, but I want you to know that I'm committed to changing, and I want to help others who are going through what I went through. Louise smiled, tears in her eyes. Eddie, I'm so proud of you, and I know you can make a difference in the lives of others. Let's work on that together. Inspired by his journey, Eddie proposed a project at the church to support at-risk youth. Pastor Sean and Louise were enthusiastic about the idea, and the proposal was warmly received by the congregation. Eddie felt he had found a new purpose. With the support of Louise, Pastor Sean, and the community, he was ready to face any challenge that came his way. That night, Eddie felt an inner peace he had never experienced before. He knew that with faith, love, and determination, he could build a new life full of hope,